Today, we're going to look into Lesotho's history from 1964 to the present day and ask very uncomfortable questions. Was Leabua the architect of a broken political system, or was he just a man who exposed how fragile our foundations are as Basotho? Can Lesotho ever escape the curse of political betrayals, factionalism, crippling corruption, endless power struggles, and instability? And most importantly, has Lesotho's dream of peace and progress been permanently stolen by those who sought to protect it? I'm your host, Tladi P. Libita, and welcome to In Perspective, where every issue deserves a closer look.
Mr. Mandela, he knows that Lesotho was the country which was harboring him during the struggle.
The 1960s were a time of hope across Africa. Countries were gaining independence, flags were rising, and new dreams were being born. Democracy, self-rule, and independence were supposed to be Lesotho's rebirth, a fresh start and a new path that would finally bring dignity, opportunity, and prosperity for Basotho. But instead, the first cracks in the foundations appeared very early, in the very beginning. The 1965 general elections, Lesotho's first, were won by Basotho National Party, BNP, under the leadership of Chief Leabua Jonathan, the man who would ultimately usher Lesotho's independence. But instead of Lesotho leading a peaceful democracy, political rivalry took an immediate, treacherous turn. Two major political forces clashed fiercely, and the election, which was tightly contested, was marred by accusations of intimidation, bribery, and unfair advantages from both sides. The opposition, Basotholand Congress Party, BCP, and its supporters refused to accept the results, accusing the BNP of manipulating the process with help from colonial administrators. Violence erupted, especially in the rural BCP strongholds, and clashes between party supporters turned deadly in some areas. And trust between political opponents was shattered. And this poisoned political environment set the stage for what would happen later. In 1917, the next election was held. Basotho had spoken. BCP won the election, and for the first time, democracy was alive. Facing an electoral defeat, Prime Minister Leabua did something that would haunt Lesotho politics forever. He annulled the election results and dissolved parliament. He declared a state of emergency and suspended the constitution. He ruled by decree, and just like that, Lesotho's first true taste of democracy died before it could even take its first breath. It is this moment that Lesotho was betrayed and would effectively now become an authoritarian state. Through the 1970s, Opposition voices were silenced, newspapers were censored, critics were jailed or even disappeared, and many BCP members fled to neighboring countries. In 1974, the BCP leader, Ntsumukhehle, launched the Lesotho Liberation Army from exile, an armed insurrection aimed at overthrowing Chief Leabua's regime. This attempt was crushed, with many rebels either captured or killed. And the government tightened its grip, with repression inside Lesotho becoming and growing even harsher. By 1986, dissatisfaction with Leabua's authoritarian rule reached boiling point. The military removed him in a bloodless military coup led by Major General Leabua. Not to restore democracy, but instead to rearrange the pieces of power. By 1990, a bitter power struggle reached its breaking point. Leabua turned on the king, King Moshoeshoe II, stripping him of power in yet another military coup, and installed his son, King Letsie III. In 1991, a mutiny from within Legaña's own military ranks, led by Colonel Piswana Ramayema, swept Legaña out of power. In 1993, democracy finally returned. But was Lesotho ready? A battered nation emerging from multiple coups, broken promises, and lost dreams, was finally returning to democracy. And BCP, under the aging Ntsumukhehle, won every seat. Every single one. And for the first time in a generation, hope seemed real for Basotho. But what happens when the demons of the past are never truly exorcised? When old rivalries, power struggles, and the hunger for revenge seep into the soul and to the very core of a nation. In August 1994, King Letsie III, pressured by elements within the military, staged a palace coup. But under domestic and international pressures, civilian rule was finally restored. But the warning was still clear. Lesotho's democracy was never going to be about the ballot box alone. It would be about survival. The supposed champions of democracy, BCP, began to fracture in 1997. Ntsumukhehle, frustrated by internal dissent, left the BCP to form LCD, Lesotho Congress for Democracy. And by 1998, after yet another landslide victory for Ntsumukhehle, this time under the LCD, chaos returned to Lesotho again. Opposition parties cried foul, claiming electoral fraud. Protests spiraled to unprecedented levels of violence, looting, casualties, and destruction of property. The capital, Maseru, it burned. Desperate, the government called on SADC once again, and South Africa and Botswana troops rolled into Lesotho to restore order. The new millennium, or the 2000s, ushered in a new era of fragile coalition government, not born from unity but from political necessity. No party could dominate outright. Every election brought fragile alliances, and every fragile alliance bred betrayal. Coups were no longer declared openly, but instead they were whispered in the shadows, plotted behind closed doors, orchestrated in army barracks and party backrooms. Political assassination, once unthinkable, now became a weapon in a deadly game of power. By 2012, Lesotho witnessed something never seen before: a coalition government. After elections, Pakadi Tamusisidi, his Democratic Congress, won the most seats, but not enough to govern alone. Three smaller parties, ABC, LCD, and BNP, joined forces, forming a coalition government. A new experience and a new balance of power. But the cracks appeared almost immediately. By March 2014, tensions had reached a boiling point. A motion of no confidence against Prime Minister Tom Thabane was submitted, but Thabane suspended parliament and dodged his imminent collapse and dodged the imminent collapse of his leadership, or his government. Then, in the most dramatic moment yet, soldiers assaulted the Prime Minister's residence. Thabane had no choice but to flee and escape what looked like a military takeover. Uncertainty gripped the nation. Would Tom Thabane ever return? Had another coup succeeded? In 2015, Lieutenant General Maparankwe Mahao, a man who dared to reform the system, was ambushed, gunned down, and murdered in front of his family members. But no one of significance was ever truly held accountable. This was another chilling message that was sent. In Lesotho, ambition is deadlier than bullets. It was clear that Lesotho could not escape its cycle of instability without intervention. SADC stepped in, brokered an agreement to reconvene parliament and to hold early elections in 2015, paving the way for the return of former Prime Minister Pakadi Tamusisidi, who was then removed in a vote of no confidence in 2017. Lesotho then was back to where it started. Uncertainty, instability, and waiting for the next betrayal. Tom Thabane returned, triumphant, but old habits die hard. Corruption scandals rocked and surrounded his administration. Then, the unthinkable. His new wife was accused of orchestrating the assassination of his estranged former wife. And in 2020, Tom Thabane faced pressure to step down due to his alleged role in his estranged former wife's murder. The coalition government subsequently collapsed after ABC's alliance partners withdrew their support. Tom Thabane resigned from the premiership and was replaced by Finance Minister Moeketsi Majoro. By 2022, Lesotho was desperate for new leadership. And then enter Sam Matekane with his RFP party. Sam Matekane and his party promised a new way forward. It was a beacon of hope. But underneath the optimism, the cycle was still alive. Cracks of instability appeared almost immediately after the founding of his party. From the very start, infighting rocked the RFP. Personal ambitions, factionalism, and shadow power struggles. The old disease of betrayal and rivalry simply found a new home, but this time with new faces. Matekane's circle of elites, handpicked for power, included top business figures, former government officials, and financial executives. His reasoning: the individuals embodied RFP's vision of competence and success. But some saw this as a calculated move to concentrate power around loyalists, ensuring that the RFP remained firmly in Matekane's grip. Barely a year into Sam Matekane's leadership, the country was forced into a state of emergency, imposing a curfew to curb violent crime and rising homicides following the assassination of journalist Radikonelo Joki. Backlash against the curfew was swift and loud, with critics arguing that it was more about controlling the population than stopping crime. Matekane faced a no-confidence vote from 11 political parties, seizing on divisions within his own RFP. With 61 MPs ready to oust him, he stood at the brink of removal, a position many of Lesotho's leaders have found themselves in before. But the attempted political takeover hit a wall. A last-minute court interdict delayed the process, buying Matekane precious time. But what made this power struggle even more explosive was the unprecedented move by Lesotho's security chiefs. The army, the police, and intelligence services issued a chilling statement, declaring that Matekane's removal will not happen. In an unexpected turn, the Basotho Action Party, BAP, joined Matekane's coalition, restoring his parliamentary majority and blocking the motion against him. So, in 1970, Leabua Jonathan had a choice: concede defeat, honor the will of the people, and allow democracy to take root. But instead, he chose betrayal, and in that very moment, rewrote the future of Lesotho forever. That single act did not just steal power, it poisoned the very foundation of our politics. It set fire to democracy before it could even breathe. And today, we are still living in the wreckage of his decision. And since that day, we have never had true governance, only survival. Lesotho does not have elections. Well, we do have elections, but we have more power struggles disguised as democracy. We technically do not have leaders. We have rulers clawing for control and protecting their own interests, playing the same ruthless game over and over and over again. We do not have stability. We have coups, revenge politics, betrayals, corruption, and factionalism spinning in an endless cycle. We've changed the faces, we've changed the names, we've changed parties, but never the system. Matekana's battles are not new. Tom Tabane's struggles were not new either. And Masisiri's betrayals were also not new. But the curse of that stolen election, almost 60 years later, we're still trapped in the shadow of Leabua's refusal. We're still ruled by the ghost of his ambition. We're still fighting for a democracy that never truly existed. So I want to leave you with this. Do you still believe that Lesotho can ever see a brighter future? I mean, honestly. Can we ever escape the legacy of power, betrayal, and corruption? Or are we too far gone chasing democracy while still repeating the sins of the past? Or are we destined to keep reliving the same nightmare generation after generation? This is In Perspective, where every issue deserves a closer look. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode.